Welcome to another edition of AVRant. My name is Rob H, and I am here with...
Austin Pond.
Yes,
for the first time in a very long time.
Yes, producer Austin. Here. Sorry, I didn't get the camera switched over there in a while. But yes, that's welcome back, Austin. It's good to finally see your face on the podcast.
Yes. I'm here. I haven't been here for not wanting to be. It's hard to schedule 3 people where you can get everybody on. So
absolutely, we understand. So just so folks know, Tom Andry is the normal host of this podcast, but he is busy preparing for Hurricane Irma, which is bearing down on Florida as we speak. So definitely hoping everyone stays safe. Stay safe, Tom and Tom's family. Definitely keeping everyone in our thoughts there. So fingers crossed this one isn't too damaging, but yes, definitely better for him to be prepared than trying to do a podcast and having floodwaters come in as he does it or something. So, yeah.
Yeah, and just like if you mention me every week so people are aware that I have another show. Kenny and Kate, who are very... lately rarely co-hosts, but that's not for the same reasons I'm not on here very often. They both live in Miami, and so they're having to deal with preparing for it also.
Yeah.
So yeah, I hope everybody's okay.
Well, just so folks know, this is AVRant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to answer a bunch of questions about home theater and AV. But yes, we want to start off the podcast welcoming Austin back to the show, making sure that everyone who is in dealing with all these natural disasters that are going on, because there's multiple of them happening all over the world. So keeping everyone in our thoughts. And it's not fantastic times, but we are going to try and lighten the mood, talk about home theater and AV. That's what we're here to do. Yeah?
Yep.
All right. So, yes, we are AVRant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. And we want to start off by thanking our listeners of the week. That's how we're going to start this one. Now, I want to let people know, folks donate to the podcast. Tom is the only person who sees those donations. So since Tom is away this week, I do not have the complete list. There's every possibility that other people donated. I only happen to know someone who mentioned it in their email that they sent us a donation. So George, thank you for your donation. And everyone else who might have donated to the podcast, thank you as well. We will make sure to mention you by name next week when Tom is back.
Yes. Do you want me to go through the rest of these?
Sure, yeah. Let's split it up.
So Martin let Oppo know that we, AVRant, were the reason that he purchased a UDP 203 UHD Blu-ray player, because it's another way that you can support the show by telling people that you bought stuff because we told you to, or
that's
because
right.
You heard about it here. You don't have to give us money directly, although we much appreciate that as well. But... I mean, big stuff comes out of the manufacturers being aware of us. So.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that a little bit.
We are
sure, especially with Austin here. We are definitely going to talk about that.
Also, and in that sort of particular case, Jay wrote directly to Gary Yakubian over at SVS and let him know that he bought 4 SVS Prime Elevation speakers to use as his Atmos speakers because of Tom's review of the Prime Elevation speakers. Nice. And Mike took it upon himself to get in direct contact with Mark, the owner of Accessories for Less, and talk to him about how much we recommend them, how often we mention them, and asked if Mark was aware of us. And apparently they are. Mm-hmm. And even apparently he's working to get some consideration of Tom getting an extra discount on a receiver that maybe his wife will accept the price of. So we'll see how that goes.
Well, it seems like it might be gratis, which is definitely a price that no one can complain about. So Mark is really enthusiastic right now because Accessories for Less has just started recently offering Pioneer receivers and Pioneer Elite receivers. And for the Pioneer Elite models, they actually come with a 3-year warranty rather than the 1-year warranty, which is what we find on pretty much all of the other receivers. So Accessories for Less sells refurbished products. These are like fully inspected, make sure that they're working 100%, and then they normally come with a 1-year warranty. A lot of places you'll find refurbished or B-stock products come with only a 90-day warranty, but we like Accessories for Less because they get a 1-year warranty from the manufacturers directly. Well, the Pioneer Elites are coming with a 3-year warranty, so even better there, even better backup. The prices are really nice. Mark is a big fan of the Class D amps that the Pioneer Elites have built in because they can actually deliver more simultaneous power. I mean, that's just because Class D amps are more efficient, right? So for a given power supply, they can deliver more simultaneous power. So if you have 7 or 9 speakers connected, like you might, instead of the power supply being divided and then having to go into 7 or 9 less efficient Class A B amps, they can go into these more efficient Class D amps. You get higher wattage per speaker, all simultaneous. So there's 11 speaker processing on the Pioneer Elite LX 701, 801, and 901. So it's interesting they have 3 models that can do 11 speaker processing. So he really wants Tom to try one out because we haven't talked a whole lot about Pioneer. Mark is kind of like, he wasn't really super aware of Pioneer's offerings either. He's like, hey, actually, these are pretty darn good. It'd be cool if we could like review it, talk about it. He also gave us a bit of a scoop because when it comes to Dolby Vision, I've been going by Scott Wilkinson's excellent research that he did and posted on AVS forum about which AV receivers are presently support Dolby Vision pass-through or will via a firmware update, and only the very newest Pioneer models that end with the numeral 2 are on that list. Well, he said because Pioneer is now wholly owned by Onkyo and they're essentially sharing software and firmware development, that he's heard directly from the Pioneer engineers that they expect to get these ones that end in numeral 1, like the 701, 801, and 901, they should be getting a Dolby Vision pass-through update via firmware as well. So even a bit of scoop of information there. So yeah, check them out. They're worth checking out. The feature sets are definitely going to work for some people. The prices and the warranty are definitely going to work for just about everybody. So yeah, it's cool that they got them there.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is.
So that's it.
Tom has not been a huge fan of some Class D amplifier using products in the past, so it will be interesting to hear what he thinks.
Well, I mean, in Tom's case, it should be really fine because the Aperion Veris speakers that he uses are very easy to drive.
Yeah.
So they should be no problem for a Class D amp whatsoever. I mean, most speakers won't be. It's only very rare cases, particularly if you have very high frequencies that get very low in impedance. That tends to be the one thing that trips up Class D amplifiers fairly regularly. But yeah, should be fine for Tom's speakers. So it'll be interesting. Yeah, can't complain about the deal we got there. So that's it for our listeners of the week. George, for your donation. Martin, Jay, Mike, thank you all so much for supporting the podcast. If you would like to donate to support to the podcast, come to avrant.com. That's our website. And over on the right-hand side, there is a buy us a cup of coffee link. Tom's very proud of the cup of coffee graphic that he created all by himself. Yeah, that was a Tom artistic project. But yes, you can do that. It takes you to PayPal. You don't need a PayPal account. You can just use a credit card, but you can donate to support the podcast that way. And of course, we're all about answering questions. And if you want your question answered, all you have to do is ask. You send your question to question@avrant.com. That's going to go to Austin.
That comes to me.
That's right. It's going to go to Austin. It's going to come to me as well. I get CC'd on that so that we hopefully don't miss any, but that's where you want to write to us, question@avrant.com. Now, you can reach us individually if you want to for some reason. I'm rob@avrant.com. Tom is tom@avrant.com. And you can reach us on Twitter. I'm @FirstReflect. Tom is @avrant_Tom. And Austin is @AustinPond. Let's see. We can look at Austin's little lower third there. If you're watching us on YouTube, youtube.com/C, that's just the letter C, /AVRant. You can find our videos there. It doesn't have your Twitter on your lower third.
Oh, it doesn't? I thought it did. But
it
still,
has your name.
because it's my name. Yeah, it's the same as my name. So
people can finally see it is Austin with an E, not an I. So there we go. Austin Pond. And yeah, you have your own podcast. You can see it right there. That one we can see on your lower third. It's We Watch Movies. With a name like that, what could it possibly be about, Austin?
It's actually about lampshades.
Not lampshading, but actual physical lampshades.
Physical lampshades. Not just vintage lampshades, not just new, all different materials, colors, big and small. Which ones are best to put on your head at parties? Which one are best for your actual lamps? The whole thing.
Very good. Lampshades, We Watch Movies. What else would it be? So let's get into some news here, yeah? So I'm going to read the news? Is that what we decided?
Yeah, you're going to read the news.
I'm going to read the news. All right, I better scroll to where the news is then. That would probably help me out. So yeah, listeners send us news articles. So that's great for us, helps us out. And one of those came from Carl. Carl sent us some articles. So it appears that Sonos is preparing to launch their own voice-controlled smart speaker. So Sonos, if you're not familiar, does whole house audio, wireless whole house audio that sets up its own ad hoc Wi-Fi network that doesn't necessarily necessarily rely on your Wi-Fi router. It's its own ad hoc Wi-Fi network for whole house audio. But so far, they haven't had a so-called smart speaker that you can control with your voice. Well, they're going to launch their own. Supposedly it's coming October 4th. There were FCC filings saying that it will support multiple voice assistants. So that means it'll be probably the most flexible of the whole house voice-controlled speakers, because everyone else is like, we just use our own voice-controlled assistants. They're going to support a whole bunch of them, and one of them is already confirmed to be Amazon's. I'm not going to say the name. It's she who shall not be named, the name that starts with an A, so I don't set off people's speakers while we're talking on the podcast if you're listening on stuff out loud instead of headphones. But Amazon and Sonos, as well as Bose Sound United. So Sound United is now the parent company of like Denon and Marantz and all of those other D&M holding companies. And Samsung. So of course Samsung also is now the entire owner of the Harman Group, right? JBL and all of that as well. So all of these things have been turned into gigantic conglomerates. But Sonos, Bose, Sound United, Samsung, they've all confirmed they're working along with Amazon to get Amazon's voice control into their products. And Amazon has just enabled their own multi-room music for some streaming services. Those would include Amazon Music, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, and Pandora right now, with Spotify and SiriusXM coming soon. And that's on their own Echo devices. So the idea is that you'll be able to use these other companies' smart speakers or voice-enabled, Amazon voice-enabled products right alongside Echo products. You can play the same thing in every room, regardless of which one, as long as it works with Amazon's voice assistant. So yeah, kind of cool. Any thoughts there, Austin?
I do kind of wonder, since it's going to supposedly use the rest of them, which you would think would probably be at least Google and maybe Cortana, who knows,
probably everyone but Apple, right?
Yeah, probably. How do you tell it which one do you want? Does it always listening for the key phrase for each one, or do you have to select which one you want to use, and then that becomes the default?
Yeah, that's unknown at this point.
Yeah, I know, but that could be messy depending on how they decide to do it.
Well, at least they didn't decide to create their own, because that's what I was afraid of. I was afraid they were going to create their own. I mean, I'm kind of surprised to see Samsung on their list, because they have their Bixby that they're trying to get going, so who knows?
Yeah, but I guess even they see how that Sonos is kind of everywhere and lots of people already have them. So if you can get your name in, even if it's alongside somebody else's, then it's better.
I would like them all to just kind of, get together, work together, be nicer than having to have these separate little walled off gardens where you can only use this group of products and only use this group of products over here. So yeah,
it seems like a step that way, at least.
Yep.
So
that's good. So next story, Dirac. They have plans to show their mobile Dirac Live app at CEDIA this year, which is, just next week. So they have a launch planned for fall of 2017, so fairly soon. It's meant to make taking the Dirac measurements and the whole setup process easier for end users. It's going to walk them through the process if you have an iOS or an Android device, so apps for both operating systems, and it's going to allow users to manually adjust the target curve right on your tablet or smartphone. So this isn't really changing what Dirac does in any way. It's just giving you hopefully a better user interface, a more user-friendly interface for end users. That's what's going on there. Any thoughts?
No.
Nah. That's just, it is what it is, huh?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. I don't think there's much to say about it.
No. So we've had IFA going on in Berlin, Germany over this past week. So that's their big consumer electronics trade. So there's some fun information there. So I want to mention there was a couple of stories. We're not going to have links for this. So we post links in our show notes over at avrant.com if you want to see links to the products we recommend and stories that we talk about. But there were a couple that I'm not going to post links to, but they seem to get a lot of attention. One was B&O, that's Bang & Olufsen, launching some OLED TVs. Now, their whole thing was that they put it on a stand, and the stand is motorized, so you can use a remote control to swivel it, right? Like motorized swivel. I don't know. I guess that's useful for some people. Turn it away from the window. Yeah, but anyway, very expensive. But the part that kind of made me laugh was they were touting how they are using WebOS as the interface, which is LG's interface. And of course, the being OLED, large OLEDs, 55 and 65 and 77-inch OLEDs, they are from LG Display, because no one else is making OLEDs in that size. So these really are just LG TVs. Like they didn't like Sony changes the software that's behind it, right? It's an LG panel, but they have their own software. Panasonic, it's an LG panel, but they have their own software. This B&O one that they're like touting as being so great, it's like, but you didn't change anything. It really is just the LG TV on a motorized stand, and it costs like as much as a car. So yeah, that one I found a little bit humorous. And the other one was TCL announced an 85-inch LCD that has 1,000 zones of local dimming with quantum dots, with 1,200 nits that they're claiming, but no price announced. So that's why I'm not putting it in as an official story yet, because unless there's a price, I'm like, who knows? That could be. I mean, it's TCL, so you're hoping it would be more affordable. I'm hoping something can replace that UMax 85 from the seemingly almost now defunct La Echo company.
They did not. That didn't stick around at all.
No, that didn't last. So TCL seems to be doing better than La Echo, but I'm hoping there's something that can, because theirs was a $5,000 85-inch, which was nice, and nothing else really does that. So I'm hoping TCL, finger crossed, TCL will bring the price down. But the news that I am going to link to, JVC, they introduced 3 new eShift 5. They're all the way up to eShift 5 now. Projectors at IFA. Their model numbers there are the X9900, X7900, and X5900. They're expected to launch in October. Some people were a little surprised at that, because usually when they announce, they don't come out till November or December, but that's because very, very little changed from the existing models, which would be like the X970, 770, and 570. So the model numbers went up that way. So the biggest new feature, aside from eShift 5 instead of eShift 4, seems to be that they're offering 2 HDR modes now. One basically sacrifices the DCI P3 color, bumps you back down to Rec 709 color in favor of giving you more peak brightness for HDR. And then the second HDR mode sacrifices some of that maximum peak brightness in order to deliver the full DCI P3 color. So users now have the choice how they want to handle HDR, better peak brightness or wider color. And it also happens to be the 20th anniversary of JVC's DILA technology, which is their name for liquid crystalline silicon. So they're introducing a special 20 LTD model, which comes in, their words, JVC red, right? Which is like kind of like Ferrari red, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know why you would want a projector that has a bright red case, but that's what it is. Now, they're saying it uses hand-picked parts, but it's even more hand-picked than the already hand-picked X9900, because the X970 that's out there right now and this new X9900 coming out to replace it, the difference between that and the X770 or the X7900 coming out to replace that model is that they say the higher model number ones have hand-picked parts, otherwise they're identical in every way. Well, the 20 LTD is even more hand-picked, they claim. So I don't know how that works, but
all of that hand-picked part stuff is goofy anyway. So but especially like, does that mean that you're skipping over some parts that should be good enough to go in the 9900 and just to save them for the limited one?
Just by random chance, there must be some X770s that happen to get parts just as good as any X970, right? Like just from random chance, because they didn't make a separate manufacturing run for the parts inside. They just supposedly hand selected the best ones. So yeah, that's all a little funny, but yeah, not a big change there, which means there's a couple of things. First of all, the whole 2 modes, for one having DCI P3 color and the other having higher peak brightness, you can already kind of do that on the existing ones depending on which picture mode you choose, because it's only if you pick one of the cinema modes that it puts the DCI filter, the DCI color filter, goes into the light path. So if you don't pick that picture mode, if you picked a different picture mode like living room or standard or something like that, then that's effectively the same thing. The DCI filter goes away and you get the higher peak brightness. So I guess it's a clearer name, but that's not really a new feature when you think about it. And then that means models like the X770, which is already a pretty good value if you want something that can handle 4K, HDR, fantastic black levels, it's going to be going on clearance. So for everyone who is kind of waiting on a really good projector, come October, which isn't very far away, Could be a good time to keep your eye out for an X770. That's what I say. So yeah, last bit of news again out of IFA. Sony also announced some projectors. They'll be introducing 3 new projector models. The model numbers and the prices were specific for Europe, so those will likely be different model numbers. They are a bit confusing. If you look at the North American model numbers, these model numbers won't make a whole lot of sense, but these are for Europe. The prices are in euros, and usually that just translates straight over to US dollars, so it's probably going to be pretty close. But they announced the VW260ES at the lowest price. This brings genuine 4K resolution. So this is a 4096 by 2160 resolution chip. It's genuine 4K to the lowest price point we've ever seen for genuine 4K. It's 5,000 euros, which will probably be 5,000 to 5,500 US dollars when it comes out in North America. And then they have a VW360ES, which adds a dynamic iris and motorized lens memory at 7,000 euros. So the 260 is like the value champ. If you want the motorized lens memory and the dynamic iris, it's a couple $1,000 more. So it's quite a bit, but similar performance. Otherwise, the exciting model, of course, though, was the VW760ES, which is laser driven. So it's a laser light engine, genuine 4K resolution, and the price point there is 15,000 euros. So it's $15,000 more likely in North America. But while that's far too expensive for most people, you have to look at 2 years ago, a genuine 4K laser-driven projector was $60,000. Last year, JVC brought out one that was $35,000, and now Sony's bringing one out at $15,000. So the price erosion is happening quick. That's the exciting part. And
yeah,
thoughts?
I did not expect it to be that fast, that they would get it down. I mean, I expected it to come down, like $60,000 was just because they were the first ones and it was new, and stuff always comes down. But that's a big jump in a short amount of time.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. Most of the people who saw it, they say, I mean, they're still tweaking it. The firmware isn't finalized and all that. And they're like, basically the black levels of the laser-driven ones still aren't as good as like JVC's E-Shift ones that still use a traditional lamp. So if you want maximum deep black levels, maximum contrast, at the same time, bright image and black next to each other on the screen at the same time, the JVCs are still the champs. But obviously, this stuff is going to go nowhere but keep improving and keep getting less expensive. So it's nice to see that happening that quickly. All right, I'm done talking for a little while.
Yeah. So comments. Mark on Twitter ordered an SVS PB2000 subwoofer, and apparently someone was a little careless with a forklift and stuck it into the side of the box. But the sturdiness of the metal front grills that come with the SVS subwoofers was enough to protect the actual subwoofer itself. So he was quite pleased about that.
Yeah, I know this all too well. When I ordered my dual PC13 Ultra cylinder subwoofers, one of them came with a forklift tang having gone right through the box and right through the side of well into the cylinders. Like, as sturdy as the cylinders are, they can't take on a forklift tang at full bore and survive that. So amazing that this meshed metal grill survived that. That's for their part. This was mentioned on Twitter. Gary and Gary Yakubian and other people at SVS, they're like, hey, if there was any damage even just to the grill, like, let us know. We'll get that fixed up. But yeah, Mark was pleased. He's like, subwoofer still working.
Yeah, well, I mean, those, because I have a couple of them sitting over there right now. Those grills are pretty heavy and quite sturdy seeming. So I'm not necessarily surprised, although I wouldn't want to have seen it tested like that. Fred. Last week we answered Fred's questions, and in addition to Elite Screens and Seymour AV, we mentioned IllunaVision as a potential brand for acoustically transparent motorized roll-down screens. He got in touch with them, and it turns out that their price, after shipping from Canada to the US, is slightly higher than Seymour AV's. So that has him strongly leaning towards Seymour at this point. Is there any reason for him to stray away from that?
Really not. Not in my opinion. I mean, if the price came out low, I mean, Seymour AV, in my opinion, is pretty much like bar none the nicest screens for acoustically transparent. I'd pick them just about over anybody else, regardless of the price, honestly. So given that it's in Canada, it's the reverse. In Canada, the LunaVision screens end up being slightly less expensive than the Seymour AV. That's just exchange rate, cross-border shipping, all that, as you would expect. They're very, very comparable to one another. But yeah, if Seymour AV in the States is slightly less expensive, no reason to stray from that. The only thing I would mention is, the Elite screens, in this case, for 120-inch motorized, tab tensioned, acoustically transparent, the Elite screen ones was about $600 less. Now, if $600 is something where, you have a limited budget, that gets you all the way or most of the way to adding a second subwoofer when you'd have to only go with one subwoofer if you didn't have that $600 on hand. Like, that's where it can make a real difference. But Fred, if you can afford the Seymour AV screen, I promise it won't disappoint you, and it's going to last you a long, long time. So yeah, no reason to stray from that.
George wanted to let us know that our insistence that a receiver going into protection mode is almost always due to a short in the speaker wire saved him some money. He learned about Accessories for Less and RBH speakers from us, and about a year and a half ago, he bought a Denon X4000 and 3 RBH speakers for his mains and center. The Denon started shutting down, and he thought it was overheating since he had it in the closet with the rest of his equipment. He improved the cooling, but it still shut down, and then started shutting down and going into protection mode even more frequently. He checked the speaker wires with a multimeter, and everything seemed fine. And he unplugged the speakers, visually checked the wire, and everything seemed fine. He plugged everything back in, and it went into protection mode again.
Yup.
He was about ready to have it repaired or consider buying something else, but he heard our voices in his head saying, "It's the speaker wire.
It's the speaker wire."
So he tried one last experiment. He unplugged all the speakers, then plugged in just one. Then plugged in one more, and kept adding them one at a time. And when he plugged in the center speaker, it went into protection mode.
Yeah.
So it was a short, and it was only with the wire in that particular speaker. He ended up upgrading to a different center speaker afterwards anyway, but we still saved him from thinking that there was something wrong with his receiver and spending even more money. So
Yeah. So I mean, hey, this is not an "I told you so" situation, because we all completely understand how frustrating and annoying it is to think, like, you're looking at it, you're like, I don't see any little strands. How could it be anything? I know I plugged this all incorrectly. It's like, it still ends up being the speaker wire. Sometimes we don't even know how, but it is. That's like what it is.
yeah, and it's dumb, and you feel embarrassed about it, and you don't want to have to rewire everything.
Lee
or
has still
plug
never
everything back
admitted.
in. No, that's got to be what it was. What else could it have been? But that's so often what it is. You just have to do it, and it's free. So,
but sometimes time consuming. So we understand.
Yeah, it's time consuming, but it isn't actual money. So that's all the comments. So
do we have Mark? We have one more from Mark.
Oh wait, did we?
I think we do.
Did we?
Yeah.
Oh, we did. Yes, we did. Sorry, Mark. So we didn't discuss Mark's Denon 4520 receiver problems on the show, but it shut down, refused to power back on, and had a blinking green power light and couldn't even be factory reset. The front display was kaput. No sound was coming out, but he could get a video signal to pass through it. I guess you probably talked to him via email. I don't even remember seeing this one, but maybe I just don't remember. But we couldn't offer him any help except to talk to Denon and see if they could get it repaired. Yeah. He did have it repaired at a place called QuickBeam in Albuquerque, New Mexico, who have been around for about 40 years. It only took 2 days and $90 to have it repaired, and he considers it to be well worth it since he was contemplating having to buy a whole new receiver. It turns out there was a blown fuse inside and some solder joints in the power section. They were kind of worn, but now it's all fixed and working well again. And so sometimes repair stories turn out okay.
Really glad to hear it. I mean, mostly glad that Mark has a working receiver. Again, that's by far the number one thing. And I mean, it sucks having to pay $90 for something that was, new and working well. But compared to the several $100s at a minimum cost for replacing the whole thing with something new, $90, all things considered, not too bad. But it's just, we hear quite a few stories of, the procedure when you're getting a repair is you do have to take it to whatever local repair shop is licensed by Denon and AVRant to make the repair, or, any brand, right? Whatever local repair shop they've licensed to do it. You have to take it to them. We've heard so many times people say, took it to them. It cost $100 just for them to even look at it. They weren't able to fix it, had to get back in touch with the company, eventually send it to like their headquarters or their like, central warehouse or something and eventually did get repaired. Like the people who've been persistent and polite about it through the process have usually at the end of it all come out with a good repair. But so often it seems like the local repair shop isn't a whole lot of help. So kudos to QuickBeam. There's a reason they've been around for 40 years. Glad to hear it. Did the right thing. Congrats, Mark. Glad it only cost $90. Not great it had to cost that much even, but all things considered, pretty good.
Yeah, way cheaper than a receiver.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, I mean, Tom often says, hey, look for a blown fuse, but these ones aren't like, it's not like a fuse on the outside of the thing that's easily user replaceable. You do have to take off the entire cover and know where it is in the power section and all that. So I mean, the thing was out of warranty already, so I guess if Mark had done that himself, it wouldn't have avoided the warranty that was already out of warranty period. But yeah, all things considered, probably safer to let the pros handle it when they're actually good at what they do. So yay. Before we do the questions, we have to ask, since Austin is actually here, you have some
I don't have
SVS
much to
equipment.
say yet. I haven't done that much of it. I mean, it's all out of the boxes and kind of set up, and I've been using it, but I haven't done the like full calibration and testing and everything. So that is coming. I will be doing it. I'll try not to make it take too long, but it's some pretty nice stuff. I will say, I mean, it didn't matter in this case because I was getting I knew what I was getting into, but these subs are big.
Okay,
Big.
so just so everyone is very clear, Austin has a pair dual PB16 Ultras. So those are the ultimate flagship in the SVS lineup of subwoofers, the biggest, loudest ones that they make. Yeah.
Yes, and a 5 speaker set. Well, towers and center and satellites from the Prime SVS Prime speaker range. And those are pretty nice also. But they're a size you would expect them to be because speakers are not often that variant in size. There's some really ridiculously huge ones and stuff. But yeah, but these, you commented on, I think, the last episode of the picture of them sitting on the porch and like, how does this fit in the door? And it was very close. There was not much space. So it was quite a job to get them in the door. And I did all of it by myself. There was a lot of sliding going on because I can't pick up a 175-pound subwoofer by myself. But I was the only one here at the time, and I couldn't get anybody else, and I wasn't going to leave them sitting on the porch. So I got them.
Well, the
all
good news
inside,
there is someone trying to steal them would have to pick up a 175-pound gigantic subwoofer that barely fits through a door. So
yeah, but they're big. Build a box. Take Tom's advice. Build a box.
So this is by no means a review at this point or anything like that.
No,
but
it's not.
Have you powered them on? You've heard them make sound.
I have, yes.
I mean, so the Prime speakers, we can probably all have somewhat of a guess because, like you say, they're a reasonable size, they're reasonable speakers. So far, they sound nice. That's probably all we need to know. That, but the subs, the biggest, baddest ones they make, have you experienced some kind of pressurization or tingling that your previous equipment didn't deliver?
I don't think I've gotten all the way to pressurization yet because I don't have the positioning of them right, and I haven't messed with the phase and everything. And it's a big space, so I mean they're big. They're two big subs, but it's still a big space. But they can put out some really serious bass, even without them being totally properly placed and without having them. I mean, the most I did was. I did kind of push them around until it kind of sounded okay, and I did level match them and everything, and I did that with the speakers and everything too. So it's decent and reasonable, but it's not done yet. So, but yes, they are very, very impressive.
Nice,
as you would expect them to be, being $2,500 subs. So, and what are they, like 1,300 watt amplifiers or something insane? Like. Is it
Gosh, yeah, I'm forgetting.
It's
yeah,
something huge. Yeah,
the sustained power was already ridiculously high, and then the peak power was like 3 times that or something. So yeah,
yeah. So, but all of that will be coming up. I'm thinking about doing several different versions of it, because SVS wants one to use on their site, so that one will be a lot more stripped down without going into super detail and without doing as many of the other pieces of it, mostly focusing on the subs and stuff. But I'm going to go through the whole thing with everything, all the speakers and the full setup and everything that for a version for this, just so that there's a reference for people to do everything they need to know.
Tom and Austin and myself, we all got together on a Google Doc and tried to write up sort of a step-by-step process that Austin could go through with. Now, our goal with what we're doing here is to try and have I guess you could call it a tutorial. It's kind of like that, or at least a visual example of doing the setup process by ear. That's what we're hoping to do. But because obviously people want to be able to confirm that the by ear method actually gives you good results. Again, we're going to thank Herb over at Cross Spectrum Labs because he donated a UMic 1 measurement microphone. So Austin's going to be taking some measurements. That way we can include some graphs. And the interesting thing is we don't really care if those graphs come out like super flat and super uniform. The point is that to Austin's ear, it's going to be nice and flat and uniform. And then we're going to see if the measurements line up with his subjective judgment of the process. That we're not gonna, fudge this stuff. This is gonna be legit. This is
it's gonna be just you're gonna see me doing it. So it'll be just how it was. And it's because it's not a rectangular room. It's not closed. There's hallways. There's other rooms. Using the dual subs is not just put it in a corner, and that's it. So it'll be somewhat more involved with that.
You don't have a middle of a front wall, middle of a back wall, because they're all irregular shapes and openings and stuff.
Yeah. So it's going to be kind of a mess to figure it out. But yeah, it's
going to be fun stuff.
It will be fun. Hopefully, it'll be fun for people to watch.
And a lot of work for Austin, who I'm taking up his evening. So, in the effort of not taking up too much of Austin's evening, let's answer some questions. You know what? Just before we do that, just because I like to throw it in there once in a while, question@avrant.com. You want your question answered? You send it there. That's what we're going to do now. Let's hit it.
Yes. Oh, one last thing. We may even do like crazy esoteric stuff like playing with port tuning and things, just because we have it available. So.
That's right.
It'll be the whole shebang.
Once you have something kind of uniform, then the effort to get it linear, because you don't have like super advanced equalization in your AV receiver, but the 16 Ultras come with a lot of tuning capabilities of their own built into the subs. So we're hoping we can get you something pretty linear on top of just uniform.
Yeah. And so all the questions this week are new because you and Tom managed to get through everything last week. So new for this week, Michael on Facebook. A few episodes ago, we talked about Jay's setup where he had a pair of Golden Ear Triton towers that have self-powered bass woofers built in. We said that he should just use the towers as normal speakers, setting them to small, don't send them any LFE signals, and eventually save up for dual actual subwoofers. Rob did mention, though, that if he wants to try it out and he wants to spend some money on a measurement microphone and mini DSP, that Jay could try adding just one subwoofer, sending the subwoofer output to that sub and the bass woofers in the towers, and using the multi-sub optimization software to treat it as 3 subs, just to see if it would work. But Michael wonders, instead of all of that, could Jay try sending the subwoofer output to one subwoofer and just one of the self-powered bass drivers in one of the towers, and position the single sub at the back of the room diagonally opposite of that tower speaker? And that way, the second speaker would not get the subwoofer signal. It would just be set to small. And so it would be kind of the regular placement of 2 subs. So Michael understands, that there's still a difference in performance from one lone sub, and especially in the extension, than in the bass section of that tower. But is it something that Jay could do to avoid the cost of buying extra equipment for now?
So, yes. Yes, you could. What you would have in effect would be 2 subwoofers that don't completely match in their capabilities, right? So
Which sometimes you have anyway,
yeah. So for people who are like, hey, wait a second, can you set one of the towers to small and then have the other one getting a subwoofer signal to its bass driver section? Like, would that physically work? And actually the answer is yes, because in effect, the front, left, and right speakers, which are both towers, they would both be getting set to small. That's the signal that's coming out of the speaker binding posts and getting sent to the two towers. Then you're taking the subwoofer out and running a wire to just one of the towers and allowing its self-powered bass driver section to act as a subwoofer. So logistically, it would function, and you'd have the situation of two not quite matched subwoofers. It's a good thought, Michael. This actually should work in the same way that two not quite perfectly matched subwoofers would work. Over the frequency range where they both work, they should act as dual subwoofers would. And if this is a rectangular room, and you have the one subwoofer at the back of the room that's diagonally opposite the tower at the front, that should work out nicely. If this isn't a rectangular room, all of a sudden you're back to having to play with phase anyway, and you might want to just bite the bullet and pay the $100 for the mini DSP and run the multi-sub optimization software, because that'll probably save you enough time that you'll think that the $100 was worth it. It's an interesting thought. I think Michael is right on this one. Yeah, you're scratching your head over there. What's the thought?
It's for sure something interesting to try. There's no reason not to try, I guess. So.
Exactly, it's free, so yeah, you can.
Especially if he's already buying the subwoofer, so you might as well if you have the time.
Yeah, again, but it's predicated on the needs to be a rectangular room, and then we run into the what I like about the multi-sub optimization software is that because it measures each of the bass producing things, whatever they might be, whether they're a tower speaker or a subwoofer, it measures them independently, sets their distances, levels, and EQs them independently, and this isn't the thing that a lot of users do, which is they try to EQ each subwoofer to be as flat as it can be, and then they play them all together. This is software that realizes there are 3 or 4 bass-producing things and tries to set the EQ in a fashion that the combined performance of all 3 or 4 of these bass-producing things creates uniform bass. That's more sophisticated. It's why you could do it really painstakingly trial and error by ear, which is what Gene did over at Audioholics. He did it himself manually, but the software kind of automates that process. So what I like about it is that it is going to prevent the really deep bass that the self-powered bass driver in the tower speaker can't really reproduce because it just doesn't have the extension to get all the way down to 20 hertz or lower. So the subwoofer optimization software is going to roll off the EQ there. It's going to recognize that thing just can't play down to 20 hertz, and it's not going to try to make it play down to 20 hertz. It's going to try and, like it says, optimize the system. Now, the multi-sub optimization software only works if you have 3 or 4 subwoofers. So it's giving, you're not spending as much by doing this dual thing where you're having just one of the towers play the bass and the subwoofer play the bass. So you're not spending the money on the measurement microphone and the mini DSP, but you now essentially only have one of those things that's playing that low, and the other one is trying to, when it really shouldn't try to. You're either going to get distortion, or it's just not really it's not going to be able to play down there. So there's a trade-off here. But yeah, overall, good idea. Give it a try because it's free there.
Sure. Do we know what subwoofer he was intending to buy?
I think it was a 2000 series SVS, if I'm remembering correctly. It was something along those lines. Yeah.
It would for sure beat whatever is.
Jay was saying in terms of output, the towers are fine. He's not lacking for output. He just wishes they could extend deeper. Yeah.
Yeah. Which you can't fix no matter how much optimization you do. You just have to buy some.
They only play so low.
They do. Byron. Byron now has 4 subwoofers, 2 SVS PC2000s and 2 PB2000s, and he's loving them. He started playing with Room EQ Wizard and the multi-sub optimization software, there it is again, and he noticed that the software did a lot of cutting and only very minimal boosting. That has Byron wondering how much headroom he has left. How can he know for certain that he can still hit the 115 dB peaks? The U-Mic 1 starts to give warning messages that it's clipping if he turns the volume up too high, and he isn't sure an SPL meter is terribly accurate. He tried using just his Denon receiver's internal test tones and increasing the trim level, and then turning up the master volume dial into positive numbers above 0 dB, and he got up to 109 dB before he started to hear a little bit of noise and got scared and turned it back down. So what's the process? He wants to make sure that his 4 subs can deliver full reference volume. How does he know?
Yeah, there's actually quite a bit to dig into here. So let's go back to the multi-sub optimization software did a fair bit of cutting and very minimal boosting. Now, that's a good thing. That's exactly what any EQ should do, because if you try to boost dips that are due to cancellations, you're just fighting a losing battle. If there's a dip in your frequency response that's because of a sound wave cancellation, doesn't matter how much you boost it, it's still going to cancel. So it's good that they've programmed the software so that it's like, hey, let's try and bring down the peaks. Let's not try to fill in the troughs too much that are due to cancellations. So that's good. Now, if what it's doing is applying cuts to the signal, you've actually gained headroom in terms of what the subwoofer itself can do, right? Because what that's saying is, here came the signal originally, and in order to deliver uniform linear bass, we had to lower that signal. Now, that didn't lower the available amplifier power in your subwoofer. That didn't lower the volume dial setting on your subwoofer. That just said, it's actually too loud where it is right now, and we're going to decrease the signal. That didn't lower your headroom. That actually gave you even more headroom, right? If it had boosted the signal, now there's less room to go upward, right? So that part, the cutting of the signal, is not something that worries me. The only thing is, could you have actually turned down the volume dials, the physical volume dials on your subwoofers, and resulted in less cutting of the signal? Because that'll actually then give you more available headroom in the subs because the volume dials were physically turned down. So that's just one little part to think about. But first of all, the headroom, because the signal was cut, not a problem. No worries there. Now, let's get into the reference volume stuff, because we've mentioned on this very podcast, full reference volume gives you specifications where the overall average volume across all frequencies at full reference volume should be 85 decibels, with peaks in each individual speaker channel as high as 105 decibels, but in the dedicated low frequency effects channel, the peak can be as high as 115 decibels. Now, we have never really gone into the full explanation there, but where those numbers came from is because everything is referenced to something they call full scale. So full scale is simply the maximum level that the signal can be, right? That's 0 dB full scale is the maximum the signal can be, and everything is some negative number below that. So where the peak values came from is that the average value for any speaker channel should be negative 20 decibels full scale for any speaker channel, and for the dedicated LFE signal, it should be negative 30 decibels full scale. So if we know that negative 20 in the speakers equals 85, then up to 0 should be 105. That's just the math. And if it's negative 30 to hit 85 dB in the low frequency effects channel, then you add 30 to 85 and you get 115. That's where those figures came from. But that is what the signal can hold. Do you actually need to play 115 dB? Well, according to Sony and Dolby's like full-sized cinema specifications, if you go and search for the white papers about setting up a full-sized cinema, they say the low-frequency effects channel should be reproduced at greater than 110 decibels. In other words, 111 decibels, right? That's the figure that you need to be able to hit. You don't actually have to hit 115 decibels from your low-frequency effects channel to meet full-size movie theater specifications. You have to be able to hit 111. The signal can hold 115, but you don't actually necessarily have to be able to reproduce. And if you're going, well, 111, 115, that doesn't sound like much. That's slightly more than double the power to go up those extra 4 decibels. So it's quite a bit that's going on there. Then on top of that, when the soundtracks are brought home, they typically remix them or remaster them. And most places these days are remastering home releases so that the average level is more about 75 decibels instead of 85, and the peaks are still the same. The maximum peak is still 20 decibels higher than that in the speakers, 30 decibels higher than that in the low frequency effects channel, which now gets you to figures of 95 in the speakers and 105 in the low frequency effects channel. That's most home releases. It's not all. There's some that still have the full theater reference. 85, 105 in the speakers, 115 for the low frequency effects channel, but a lot of them are taking it down quite a bit for the home release. So with all that preamble done, how do you know that your subwoofers can hit full reference volume? Well, that peak is supposed to be 6 decibels above what your system should be able to sustain. The peak is supposed to be less than a second. It's a peak output. It's not a sustained output. 6 decibels below that, you're supposed to be able to sustain that. Not necessarily all day long, but for longer than 1 second. So if we're taking the cinema standard, which says, hey, you need to be able to hit a 111 decibel peak, 6 decibels below that is 105. So if you can sustain 105 decibels with your subwoofers from the low frequency effects channel, you effectively have full reference volume. That's the figure you need to know. Now, your UMic 1 can handle 105. It can't really handle 115. Your SPL meter, I agree. I mean, it's not that accurate below 80 80 hertz anyway, because it's C-weighted. So it'd be a little bit hinky to try and do with an SPL meter. But Byron said he got up to 109. Now, that was just the test tone. That's a sustained signal. That's just playing and playing. That's not a momentary little blip or anything. He got up to 109, started to hear maybe a little bit of noise and got scared, which I don't blame you. Who knows? That noise could have been something else in your room. But in other words, 105, he's hitting. He's hitting 105 sustained. I'm quite certain he's got that extra 6 decibels of peak headroom. Again, a very short little burst of a signal. That's 6 decibels louder than that. Byron, you can hit full reference volume. But we haven't gone into it in that nitty-gritty detail before, so that's why I want to talk about it on the podcast.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you're for sure... Even if you're not there and you can't prove it, you're so close it doesn't matter. And that's really, really loud. Like, it's really loud. So I mean, you probably will never even listen to it that loud anyway. So
if you can hit 109 just with because remember, the internal test tone of the receiver, if you had your master volume dial set to 0 dB, that's supposed to result in 75 dB, not 85, 75. You got like... What was that, 34 decibels more?
Yeah, I mean, he said he was in positive numbers by then.
Yeah.
But
you got, I mean, so your worry about headroom of your subwoofers?
I think you're fine.
You got headroom. This was a signal that was negative 30 dB full scale. That's the original signal coming out of your AV receiver, right? So the signal wasn't saying give me 115 dB. It was saying give me 75, right? Oh, so you're negative 40, right? You're negative 40 dB full scale, and just with gain and trim level increases, you got 34 extra decibels out of those subs. And I'll bet you didn't have the volume dials even turned all the way up as high as they can go, the physical ones on the subs themselves. Dude, you got headroom for days. So yeah, no worries.
Yeah. So more bass concerns. The bass does sound much more uniform than before, but it also sounds cleaner. So he feels like going from 2 subs to 4 was well worth it. Even his wife is a believer now, he says.
Yeah.
He is still experimenting with it, but he found the multi-sub optimization software really did create much more uniform bass than a single global EQ setting applied to all 4 subwoofers gave him, at least according to the measurements. And he feels like he wouldn't mind goosing the tactile hit you in the chest bass a little more, even in spite of that. Mm-hmm. Is that okay? And if he does want to do it, what is the exact frequency range that he should goose? He assumes he could simply target whatever we tell him it is in his global EQ setting, and that should work well enough, shouldn't it?
So yes, to that last part, right? The whole idea is you now have quite uniform bass across your seating. So if you then apply a single global EQ to the whole system, right? You leave everything that was done by the multi-sub optimization software, and that's all programmed into your mini DSP. Now you use the EQ that's built into your AV receiver, say, coming out of its single subwoofer output. That is a single EQ that will then be applied on top of all of the EQ that was done by the mini DSP. And yeah, that'll absolutely work. You have uniform bass, so now by goosing that one section, you've given yourself that little bit of a hump in all of your seats. Basically, that hump for that tactile hit you in the chest stuff is centered right around 50 hertz. So if you go 50 hertz and then give yourself, let's say 20 hertz on either side, so about 30 to 70 hertz, right? But that's going to be, a bit of a hill, right? So center the EQ on 50 hertz if that's one of the options. And give yourself, about 20 hertz to either side as your Q setting. So a fairly wide Q centered on 50 hertz, that's where you want to boost it for that lovely hit you in the chest stuff. His comment about it sounding not only more uniform but also cleaner, that's one of the wonderful side effects of deep bass being now what's the term that they give for that minimum phase, right? The thing that you need to know about minimum phase, because I don't really fully understand all the mathematics that goes behind that, I'll be honest with you there, but the characteristic that's nice about minimum phase is that if you fix the frequency response, it automatically fixes the time domain stuff, and vice versa. If you fix the time domain stuff, it automatically fixes the frequency response. So this is why there are some people who say you only need one subwoofer, you just need a heck of a lot of room treatments. And that's true. You put enough room treatment, enough bass traps into your room that you fix the time domain, the ringing in the room, that you fix that with absorption or even, active bass traps or membrane bass traps or whatever. If you fix the time domain problems, it fixes the linearity of the frequency response. They're right about that. It's going to shrink your walls. It's going to be a heck of a lot of bass traps. So maybe you just want to take the same amount of money and put it into 2 or 4 subwoofers, because if you use the 2 or 4 subwoofers to fix the frequency response, it fixes the time domain problems. That's the wonderful thing about minimum phase and the deep bass. So that's why it sounds cleaner now. You fixed your frequency response. That means it fixed any ringing that was happening in your bass at the same time. That'll sound cleaner.
Justin Not Bieber on Facebook. Justin found a recording of Amber Rubarth's sessions from the 17th Ward. He's not really a big fan of that style of music, but the recording sounds so incredible that he loves listening to it anyway. Turns out it's a binaural recording. When he uses headphones, the music sounds as though the instruments are far outside of his head, unlike most recordings where it sounds as though everything is between his ears. And it even sounds incredible when using speakers, with excellent imaging. Can we help him to better understand how binaural recordings work? And if they sound this good, why aren't all, or at least more, recordings done in binaural?
Yeah, so let's just say what a binaural recording is. So normally, let's say you go to a concert venue, you're going to have some musicians up on the stage, and you're trying to decide how you want to record them, right? Now, you could put a microphone on each of their instruments. And you've seen some recordings done that way, right? Where they put a microphone right there on the violin, right there on the bell of the trumpet. They put the microphones right there, a whole bunch of microphones close mic'd right next to them, and they put the mix together later in the studio. Another method would be you take 2 microphones and you put one over on the left side of the stage and the other one over on the right side of the stage, and then you play them back through speakers that have a similar geometric spread between them. So whatever, let's say you picked a spot in the auditorium, that's where you're sitting, and the left microphone is 30 degrees to the left of center on the left side of the stage, and the right microphone is 30 degrees to the right of center on the right side of the stage. That's where you set up your speakers when you're back home, and they should essentially recreate what was captured by those left and right microphones on the side of the stage, and that'll give you a stereo recording that should hopefully give you something that sounds similar to what you would have experienced in that auditorium sitting in that seat. A binaural recording takes the microphones and puts them in your ears. Now, normally they'll use a dummy head because you don't want to use an actual person whose head is physically going to be moving around somewhat, or you pick up their heartbeat or something with the microphones. So usually they take a dummy head, they put it in one of the seats, they put the microphones in the dummy head's ears, and that's where the recording is made. Now, the way that's intended to be played back is through headphones. Right? It's the same idea as if the microphones were placed to the left and the right of the stage, and then you essentially recreate the positions of those microphones with your speakers. If the microphones are inside the ears of the listener while the recording is being made, then that's where you want the playback device to also be. So you got this dummy head, microphone in its ears, you play it back through headphones, you should get a recreation of what happened inside the ears of that dummy head. Now, that's why it gives you this sense when you're listening on headphones that the music is not, in between your ears like most recordings end up sounding. It gives you the sense that you're in an actual space with instruments that are in front of you, or if they were, arrayed around you or whatever, it'll recreate that as well. What the microphone is capturing is what they call the head-related transfer function. That's all the tiny little reflections that happen off the fleshy part of your ear that's called the pinna, reflections that came off your shoulders, your upper torso, reflections off of your own skull. Plus it's picking up whatever ambience was in the surrounding, whatever auditorium they made the recording. It picks up all that ambience, and the microphone is in the ear canal. So when that's recreated, it's recreated exactly as though all of those little head-related transfer function and ambient sounds are in there. You also get complete separation from the left ear to the right ear. The left ear is not picking up what the right ear is picking up, and vice versa. They're completely separate, and it's meant to be listened on headphones where the left ear is only getting the left ear signal and the right ear is only getting the right ear signal. And if your head and your ears are similarly shaped to the dummy head, you'll get a fantastic effect. Now, I've listened to not that many, but a handful of binaural recordings. My head must be slightly different than the dummy head that's used for a lot of them, because I certainly get sounds that sound like they're more behind me than a normal recording, more ambience, but I don't get the in front of me effect. It doesn't work for me. My head's too big and fat or something compared to the dummy head. The effect doesn't work perfectly for me. I don't know. Have you tried any, Austin?
I have tried some, and they mostly work pretty well. But I think almost anything like surround driver headphones, and anytime like in front seems to be the movement from side to in the front seems to be the hardest thing to be convincing. A lot of times it'll sound like behind works great, movement around the sides, but then when something moves from one side to the front, it almost seems like it follows the band of the headphones is kind of what it sounds like. Or it's just a little muddy exactly where it's positioned in the front, and it's not perfect. But they do have a very distinctive sound from anything else, even when they don't perfectly work.
Yeah, for sure. So Justin's experience playing it back through speakers, I might say is slightly atypical. Because
yes,
you can listen to binaural recordings through speakers. You just typically do so in a setup where the left speaker is pretty much only being heard by the left ear, and the right speaker is pretty much only being heard by the right ear. Now, you actually see people create setups where they put a physical barrier down, from the middle of their head down that bisects their front, left, and right speakers, so that you don't get the sound waves crossing from the right speaker to the left ear and vice versa from the left speaker to the right ear. Now, I happen to know Justin right now is using Martin Logan speakers. He's not using electrostatics, but he's using them with their folded ribbon tweeter, the Motion Series ones. And those are pretty directional, so maybe they're working a little bit better for Justin than your typical very wide dispersion speakers. That could be a part of it. Just that you're getting a better sense of direct sound from the left speaker to the left ear only, the right speaker to the right ear only. That's normally how a binaural recording would have to be played back on something other than headphones for the effect to work really nicely. So why aren't more or all recordings done binaurally? Because on most speaker playback systems, they don't sound quite right. They sound great on headphones. They sound great on a speaker setup where the left ear isn't getting the right speaker and the right ear isn't getting the left speaker. But for most people's setups, it ends up sounding a bit too diffuse. Sometimes the imaging even gets flipped. So you can get some odd effects listening to a binaural recording on a regular speaker system. Also,
well, and if anything moves behind then that's not going to work even if the speakers are towards the front of the room, even if they're really directional. That's just going to sound strange. I haven't heard this particular recording, so I don't know
Nor have
what
I.
exactly
Yeah,
the positioning is, but
yeah. The other part of it is that you do kind of need a venue, right? Because the only way to record it binaurally is to have this dummy head. Now, I mean, you could do that in a studio, but then you're only getting the ambience of a studio setting. And normally when they're doing a binaural recording, they're trying to capture the ambience of where the performance is taking place. So normally it's going to be for a live concert or something. And of course, there's a ton of recordings that are, only in studio, or they recorded things close mic'd, which means you could try to simulate a binaural effect. And they have this, right? They've got all these head related transfer functions measured and stuff. So you could try to create a simulated binaural effect from individual stems of music, individual pieces that were all recorded close mic'd. But that, you're fudging with it, right? You're trying to virtualize something that's better done by just having a physical dummy head with microphones in its ears. So yeah, that's more or less why we don't have all recordings done that way. Normally they're going to sound a little odd on speakers, and then the way that they're recorded tends to be, just more cost if you're actually going out to a venue and recording people playing something live. So that's mostly it.
yeah. And you have to do it with everyone playing at the same time, which they don't always do. So you can't.
Yep.
I mean, and even then, vocals or something you're going to have are probably coming over speakers of some kind, and then the positioning of those is weird. And so, yeah, you just can't. It doesn't work for everything.
Yeah.
It
But
just
we're
sound
seeing
cool
companies like
sometimes.
2L or Mark Waldrop's company, AIX Records, because they're tending to bring in musicians to do these surround sound mixes, right? Or using Oro 3D, which requires having these microphones in the positions of where the speakers are going to be and collecting all this ambience information. So they're recording real live performances. And a lot of times they're now saying, well, hey, while we're here, why don't we have a dummy head with some microphones in it and make a binaural recording too? I mean, the performers are here. We've got the head, we've got the mics. Let's just do it all at the same time. So we're seeing more of it happen that way. But your standard studio music releases, it's unlikely because they're usually just they're not even taking stems of performances anymore. They're taking one note at a time practically, right? And just splicing it all together in a computer. So that could only be virtualized at that point, and it doesn't sound as good.
Yeah. And if you want to do it, you can do it after the fact. There's lots of software that you can create surround stuff from binaural type stuff. So it won't be the same, but it'll be something. Blaine. Blaine wants some help getting the best bang for his buck for his upgrades. He's already planning on upgrading his 55-inch Samsung LCDs to a 65-inch OLED. And so with all of that money already spent, he has about $1,000 left to try and improve the sound. He already did an AVR X4300H and an Oppo 203 UHD Blu-ray player. His speakers are all Paradigm Studio series, and he has a 5.1.4 setup with in-ceiling speakers and a Paradigm PW2200 12-inch sub. His room is roughly 4,000 cubic feet, and it's a family room, so fully pressurizing it isn't really the goal. So he has a bunch of should he do this or should he do that options. So first, should he add a second sub? And if he should, what should it be? An SVS PB2000, a 12 Plus, something from HSU, something from Power Sound Audio? What should he do?
Yeah, so I mean, it's funny because we're kind of not considering all the other options that are coming up, but we will address them as they come up. But the short answer is, the second sub is the number one thing that jumps out to me here. He's got, lots of seats in here. Now, the chances of getting genuinely uniform bass across all of these seats, because he's got sideways facing seats as well, that's pretty darn low.
Those don't count. Nobody's expecting good bass in the seats on the sidewall.
Exactly. Like, please do not try to expect uniform bass across literally every seat in this space. But for the forward-facing seats that he has, things can be improved there. I'm quite certain of it versus the lone subwoofer that he has now. His speakers are very nice speakers. He's already got the video side of this, planned out. A great AV receiver, already got an Ultra HD Blu-ray player. So I'm not seeing any of that equipment that needs to be replaced. Certainly not that. Already has 5.1.4 going on. So he's got in-ceiling speakers. They already look perfectly well placed to me. So yeah, the second sub, that's the thing that stands out. Now,
if he does get a second sub, should he just go ahead and get 2 subs and have them match and sell his Paradigm sub? If he didn't do that, do any of the choices he's mentioned or some that he didn't, would they pair well with his existing sub, or does he have to replace it and get 2 matching ones?
Yeah, it's tricky. So the Paradigm PW2200, it's a 12-inch sub, 250 watts. I don't really like the way Paradigm lists their specs because they do this thing called DIN, which is supposed to be what you could expect in a typical listening room. Well, what's a typical listening room? That effectively means it's somewhere in the range of a -6 to -9 decibel figure. So most subwoofers, when you're looking at what is their extension, they'll give you the -3 decibel point. The DIN figure that Paradigm gives it's hard to say, but it's somewhere in the range of -6 to -9. So when they say this sub can extend down to 18 hertz DIN, it's more like 25 if you were looking at a normal subwoofer specifications, which is what you would expect from this size, that driver size, this wattage. You'd expect about 25 hertz extension, which means a subwoofer that would be out there right now that would have very similar capabilities to your existing PW2200 from Paradigm would be, say, HSU's VTF-1. Their VTF-1, which is a 10-inch sub, has very similar capabilities to your current Paradigm. Now, would that be a perfectly okay choice in this room? Well, you're not going to fully pressurize it. It's 4,000 cubic feet, but he already knows that. He's fine with that. He doesn't even really want to do it because it's a mixed purpose room. It's not a dedicated theater. So you could spend about that much. The other $400 subs that are out there as well, like Emotiva's S12 or RSL's Speedwoofer 10, they're all in this sort of ballpark. So it's around the $400 sub type of range is very similar to the sub you already have. Could you go for something that's even a little bit more capable? It'll play a little bit lower. It'll play a bit louder. We're going back to the situation of 2 not quite perfectly matched subs. I don't consider that the end of the world. It's not like you're starting with something horrible and adding something great and trying to expect the horrible one to keep up. You got one that's pretty good, and you're adding one that's even better. That doesn't mean that both of them suddenly got to the same level as the even better one, but overall, I think you'd be okay. A 2000 series PB2000, which, the VTF2 Mark, 5, I think, at HSU right now, or better yet, Outlaws LFM1. Those subs are kind of all in the same ballpark. VTF3 gets even louder from HSU. PB12 Plus, if you were trying to pressurize 4,000 cubic feet, I'd be like, yeah, PB12 Plus, man. Or VTF3 Mark 5 HP. Those would be great choices for a 4,000 cubic foot room. Now you're starting to get into a pretty big mismatch between that and your Paradigm. So if your goal is nice bass, more uniform bass over the majority of the frequency range, not trying to fully pressurize, I say, yeah, go for something like a 2000 series from SVS, maybe an Outlaw LFM1, something in that sort of price range, output extension range. Maybe at some point you upgrade and get a second one of those because the PW2200 isn't going to quite keep up. But I think that's pretty good. I think you'll be pleasantly, I wouldn't say surprised, but you'll be pleased with the result, I would think.
So if he doesn't do that, or if he just wants to do something else later, his surround speakers currently have dipole tweeters. So should he replace them with something in a direct firing design?
Nah.
No, I don't think so.
I'm pretty familiar with the Paradigm ADP surrounds, and they're very nice speakers. Now he's got them mounted up quite high. Not the end of the world, and over on his left side doesn't look like there's anywhere for it to go, really.
Yeah, there's kind of a door, so...
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I I wouldn't bother replacing them though. Let me put it that way. There's no reason I see to replace those speakers with something else. The difference that you would get just isn't going to be worth the what you would pay for it. Definitely put the money towards a second sub before replacing those surround speakers. I'll say it that way.
Yeah, that'll make the bigger difference. So is there any reason to replace his in-ceiling Atmos speakers with models that have aimable tweeters? No, you don't want to aim the tweeters.
That's right. We might be the only people saying it because this is a very most people are like, yeah, you got to have your Atmos speakers aimed at you. You're not supposed to. Dolby wants you to have them firing straight down exactly like you have. They're supposed to sound kind of diffuse, not completely pinpoint, because they're trying to mimic what you get in a full-size movie theater where the Atmos speakers are way up high in that commercial cinema, covering a big, wide audience. So they're not supposed to be super pinpoint. You want all of your seats to have something approaching a similar experience. So if you were to aim them right at your primary listening seat, that one's going to sound different from all the other seats, and that's not the goal. You've got the good solution already, aiming straight down.
Mm-hmm. The idea is a dome of sound.
That's right.
You don't want to point it right at you. You don't want it to be distracting. Like, oh, what was that sound up there? You just want it to be atmospheric. It's Atmos. It's atmospheric.
That's right.
So, is there anything else that he could do instead of all of this to improve his sound more than any of these options?
I mean, nothing's going to do more than adding the second sub in here. The room is fully carpeted. You've got, a fair amount of furniture, all of which looks, plush enough that it's doing some absorption. You've even got some knickknacks on the wall that are breaking that up a little bit. You could, you could consider, like, you've got pictures on the wall already. Those could be replaced with printed acoustic panels, but the difference that would make would pale in comparison to the second subwoofer.
He's already got what looks like pretty thick carpet and lots of soft furniture, so yeah, I don't think it would make a whole lot of difference.
Nope, second sub.
I might be concerned about those what look like baseball bobbleheads or something on those shelves if you start getting seriously more bass in the room, though.
Well, maybe you're going to add a little blue tack. Their heads can be a bobbling. Just stop their bodies from moving.
Yeah. So Nathan, do we know, he wonders, if the new eARC, Enhanced Audio Return Channel, requires both the TV and the receiver to support it? Or could you have an eARC TV with a standard ARC receiver and be able to pass Atmos from the TV to the receiver? He's thinking of a scenario where maybe you get a new TV and a new streaming device that both support Dolby Vision or HDR10+, but you have an older receiver that can't pass through either of those. Could you connect a new streaming box directly to the TV and use that TV's eARC port to send Atmos to the older receiver's standard ARC HDMI port?
So there's a little bit of additional confusion on top of all of this in this question. So what eARC, Enhanced Audio Return Channel, can do above and beyond the audio return channel that we already have today is it can pass lossless multi-channel audio. So this would be your Dolby True HD, your DTS HD Master Audio, or even multi-channel PCM uncompressed. The ARC that we have today, the audio return channel that we have today, can only pass the same things that your optical cable can pass. Your regular Dolby Digital, your regular DTS, or 2 channels of uncompressed PCM. Now, there is a little bit of a caveat to that, which is they've managed to get normal ARC today working with a Dolby Digital Plus signal. But Dolby Digital Plus is still compressed, it's still lossy. Enhanced Audio Return Channel is all about lossless audio. So, when you say Atmos doesn't have to be lossless. The Atmos that you get on a Blu-ray disc or an Ultra HD Blu-ray disc is a lossless version of Atmos. It is Dolby True HD lossless audio with Atmos extensions on it. DTS-X that you get on a Blu-ray or an Ultra HD Blu-ray disc is DTS HD Master Audio with DTS-X extensions on it. It's lossless. But the Atmos that you get from, say, Vudu or from Netflix, which has some Atmos titles now, that is Dolby Digital Plus lossy audio with Atmos extensions. So the Voodoo version or the Netflix version of Atmos audio, which is Dolby Digital Plus, lossy with Atmos extensions, that can go over today's audio return channel. The Vizio TVs are already doing this. The LG televisions are already doing this. You can use their audio return channel HDMI port to send Dolby Digital Plus to an AV receiver, and that Dolby Digital Plus can have the Atmos extensions. But what you can't do is the lossless version. You can't do the Dolby True HD or the DTS HD Master Audio lossless version. For that, you need eARC, and you would need it on both devices. So if you just think, if I have ARC, if I have audio return channel, it's got the limitations of ARC. It has to be lossy audio or 2-channel PCM. That's all ARC can do. Whether it's on the TV, whether it's on the AV receiver, whether it's on the Streambox, whatever it is, that's all ARC can do. eARC can do lossless, but then everything in that signal chain has to be eARC. So at that point, I mean, if you were going to buy a new AV receiver so that it has eARC, I bet that AV receiver already decodes Atmos itself. So at that point, you'd plug the new streaming device that's giving you somehow lossless Atmos audio. You'd plug it straight into the AV receiver, not into the television directly, right? So it all ends up a bit moot. I'm trying to figure out why we need eARC. I guess it's if you had a streaming service that were built into the TV itself, and some future streaming service starts to send lossless audio streaming, then that's where you would need eARC. They could, yeah. Voodoo could do it, sure.
Yeah, because otherwise it seems like just a stopgap measure, because you won't need it once every device has it on both. Or actually, you won't even need it at all, because you can just... everything works in the main line signal path, unless you're doing
like everything would go into your AV receiver, right? Yeah, soundbar might be the other one, right? Because maybe your soundbar only has one HDMI port, and that only connects to the eARC output of your television. So then all of your devices are getting plugged into the television, including your Ultra HD Blu-ray player. And then if you want lossless Atmos to go from your Ultra HD Blu-ray player into your television, and from the television to your eARC soundbar, there you go. There's another scenario where you need eARC. But yes, your television and your sound playback device must both have eARC for eARC to work.
What is it that actually makes the difference? Are there new chips they have to have? Is there any difference in the cabling, or what do you have to make it work?
The cabling's the same. It's bandwidth. It's just bandwidth.
It's just bandwidth in the processing.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, whatever the chips are that they're doing, right? They have to have it built in. So, I mean, mostly it's another sticker that they can put on the outside of the box until the entire box is covered in logos. That seems to be their primary goal. We came up with a couple scenarios there where eARC, it's built into the TV itself, or you got a sound bar and the sound bar doesn't have enough ports of its own, so you have to use the TV as your HDMI switch. There you go. Otherwise, you're just plugging everything into the AV receiver.
And it is just one more thing to stuff into HDMI that makes possibility for issues. So,
oh yes.
John on Twitter. John wants to buy some on-wall speakers, and he's considering the Paradigm Millennia LP2s, but he'd like our opinions. Are they worth the money? Well, I have no opinion. I have not heard them. I don't know. So maybe. So
I'm going by some pretty old audio memory at this point, but what I have to say about them, I definitely still wholly believe holds true. Paradigm's on-wall speakers, they have their Millennia series, they have their Cinema series. All they do for the center channel is take one of the left or rights and turn it horizontally. They don't do anything else to it. They don't rearrange the drivers. They don't change the crossover. It's just one of the front left rights turned horizontally. And when I was looking for on-wall speakers, I found that created a problem. If you were anywhere other than on axis, it altered the timbre of the sound. You got the lobing, you got the comb filtering that comes from just taking a vertical speaker that is a tweeter with woofers above and below it, which is what this design is. If you just turn that horizontal without doing anything else to the design, you tend to get off-axis problems. Now, if you're just sitting dead ahead center of this, maybe he's not even going to have a center channel. The Millennia on-wall speakers are very nice sounding speakers. I just didn't like the center speaker. That was really my only qualm with it. So I went through quite a few of the on-wall speakers in my trials when I was looking for on-wall speakers. I wound up liking Revel, because what Revel did, I mean, it was so simple what Revel did. But in Revel's on-wall speakers, they have the tweeter in the middle. If it's the vertical ones that go on the left and right, there's a woofer above, woofer below, and then a passive radiator below. What did they do? They did, it's like a 2.5-way design. So it's the mid-range below, mid-range above, woofer below, woofer above that. That was the vertical one. Now, when they turned it horizontally to make the center version, they just put the 2 mid-ranges to the left and the 2 woofers to the right. That's all they did. They essentially made it like not a Dapolito design, right? That's all they did. But it works. It works. Because instead of having the tweeters surrounded by mid-range drivers that are crossing over, they're both over to one side. And it gets rid of a lot of the lobing and comb filtering problems. Martin Logan's on-wall speakers are very nice as well. They're using that folded ribbon tweeter, which is naturally a bit more highly directional. It's a bit more of a beam, so it doesn't suffer from the interference problems of the woofers around it nearly as much. And I believe it's also a 2.5-way design, which is a help. Instead of being the straight 2-way design, it's a 2.5-way design where the bass woofers that are farther apart are only playing the bass, and then the mid-range takes care of bass and that crossover into the tweeter. So 2.5-way design helps. And then Kef's T-series have no right to sound as good as they do. That's a little bit of like craziness going on in it because they're so skinny. Like, you will not find speakers skinnier than Kef's T-series. They don't play particularly loud, and they don't play particularly low, which you would absolutely expect. But for speakers that skinny, they sound darn good. So if you don't have a huge room and you're not sitting too far away and you can cross them over to a sub at around 110, 120 hertz, the Kef T-series is really, really nice if you need something that skinny. So there's 3 alternatives that I personally would pick over the Paradigm Millennias. All of them are either less or similarly expensive, but it's mostly only about the center speaker.
If you just wanted to buy 2, then they would probably be fine.
Yeah, if you're going to run only 2 with a Phantom Center, I think the Millennias are perfectly fine. Now, are they worth more money than any of the alternatives I just mentioned? I don't think so, but they do, these Millennias that he's looking at, they do play louder than the Kef T-series. So if it's a larger room, you're sitting a bit farther away, that's worth considering. In that case, I might look at, say, the Martin Logans. The Martin Logans can play pretty darn loud. They're impressive. I like those Martin Logan on-walls.
All right. Infinite Gary. So the surround back debate is back. According to Gary's listening, Rob seems to be a little more enthusiastic about surround back speakers than Tom, while they both seem to agree that if your seat is very close to the back wall, there's not much or no point. But Gary has heard Tom say on several occasions that adding surround back speakers to its system didn't make a huge worthwhile difference, even if there was space behind the seats. When Gary tried adding surround backs to his 5.1.4 Atmos setup, which uses the upward firing modules, he felt they completed the travel of sound all around him, and were significant enough that he found the sound to be more immersive and more enjoyable. This is in his small spare bedroom setup with just a single seat that is slightly less than 4 feet from the back wall. But with proper calibration, the surround backs seem to enhance the sound rather than being distracting. So what's the final word? Well, there's never any final word on anything, but
yeah,
if you like them, fine. Like them. You tried it, you
yes,
liked it.
Absolutely.
That's the final word for you.
Gary knows this, but Gary has answered his own question, right? He added the speakers. He went from 5.1.4 to 7.1.4, and he's like, I like this better. Well, there's your answer, Gary. I mean, there's no debate there. Tom will also agree. I can absolutely feel confident speaking for Tom on this one. If someone says, I went from 5 speakers to 7, and I love it, Tom's not going to tell you don't love it or you're wrong for loving it. Like, you liked it, you thought it was worthwhile. That's all you need to know as far as that goes. Now, we've talked to quite a few people. We've done it in our hangouts after the show. We've done it via email. And some people have said, I tried adding the surround back speakers. I heard the difference. I didn't really care. Other people said, I put it back then. I really liked it. Other people said, I hear it sometimes. It's not very often. I like it when it happens, but I can kind of take it or leave it because it's not used all that frequently. So, I mean, all of those opinions are out there, and I think they're all valid. right? I think they're all completely valid because the one that I don't completely understand are the people who said, I added the surround back speakers and I heard no difference at all. Some
That must
people
have been
said
some difference. There are speakers back there now. Sound is
Yeah.
happening. So
Yeah. So that one makes me question, well, were you only listening in 5.1 mode where they literally weren't making any sound, or did you remember to wire them? Like something. That one raises a question in my mind of I heard no difference whatsoever. But I heard a difference, but I don't really care, or I heard a difference, but it's so infrequent that I didn't really think it was worth the money, or I heard the difference and I think it's great. All of those are perfectly valid to me, right? Now, in my own setup, I can use a maximum of 11 speakers. I have a very small theater. I have not very much room from the back of my seats to well, in my case, it's doors behind me, but I close those doors. So that's effectively my wall behind me. Now, I originally set it up as 7 speakers plus front wides plus front heights, because when I started my system, Atmos didn't exist yet, and that was DTS Neo X that could add front wides and front heights, and that's how I set up my 11 speakers initially. When I got Atmos, I tried 7.2.4 with front heights and rear heights, and then I tried 5.2.4, but with front wides as well, right? So I got rid of the surround backs and had front ones, because I can only use 11 speakers simultaneously. I can't use more than 11 speakers simultaneously. Now, for me, I liked having the front wides more than having the surround backs. I nudged my surround speakers a little bit farther back so that they're at more like a 120 degree angle instead of a 90 or 100 degree angle. So they're a little bit farther behind me now, my surrounds. That creates even more of a gap from my front speakers to my surround speakers that the front wide speakers fill in really nicely, in my opinion. Now, I can hear what the surround backs do. I like what the surround backs do. If I could have 7 plus front wides plus, in fact, I would go for 6 overheads if I could. So I would have 9.2.6 if I could. Even in my tiny room, that's what I would do because I think it's worth it. But not to the point of having 4 separate AV receivers. I'm not quite that crazy, although I'm darn close. So that's my take on it. Gary, you're absolutely fine. Anyone else, if you say, I tried surround backs, I have 8 feet of space behind me, I tried surround backs, and I still don't care about them, I'm like, that's also fine. Because they are used kind of infrequently. Maybe you'll love them, maybe you won't. But give it a try. If you have the speakers on hand, give it a try. What do you think, Austin?
Sure. I've found with playing with my stuff that I tend to prefer anyway having the surround speakers about 2 feet or so above ear level. Mm-hmm. And they're at about 90, 95 degrees. But I noticed that when you have them up a little higher like that, I don't notice the gap when something moves all the way behind as much, or almost at all most of the time, as when they're closer to ear level. And I don't know if that's because it just makes it more diffuse in general or what exactly is going on, but the completing the travel of sound thing seems to be helped by just having them elevated, which is what Dolby used to say, even though they don't anymore. But
it's what we still recommend, by the way.
Yeah. So I've never actually tried surround backs, so I don't know firsthand, but I have never noticed that I felt like I was missing something, but that doesn't mean that I wouldn't notice it if I added it. So someday I'll have to actually try it.
There's your final word, Gary. That's about as wishy-washy a final word as you'll ever get.
Well, that's yes. There's no final word. So continuing with Gary, there was a fair amount of talk about HDR10 Plus at the IFA show in Berlin, which Rob already talked a little bit about in the news. Panasonic said that HDMI 2.1 is not necessary for passing an HDR10 Plus signal, and they intend to issue a firmware update that will add HDR10 Plus support to their 2017 model TVs, including their OLED models that use the LG OLED panels. But LG did not commit to adding HDR10 Plus, but said they're evaluating it. And since they support more flavors of HDR than anyone else already, it's likely that they'll add it if it's feasible and has broader industry support. Nobody has talked about HDR10 Plus on projectors, though. And projectors are what Gary has the most interest in. So if HDMI 2.1 isn't necessary, could current HDR10 projectors potentially get the Plus via a firmware update?
So, first of all, I'm thankful that somebody has said HDMI 2.1 ports aren't strictly necessary. They shouldn't be. It's really not that much more data being passed, so bandwidth-wise, HDMI 2.0 should be fine. You still need a fair amount of processing power, though, so upgrading older displays just from a strictly processing power point of view might be kind of difficult, but anything that can process Dolby Vision ought to be able to process HDMI or HDR10 plus. So there's a little bit of a processing power question in there, but on
projectors don't do Atmos, so
they don't do Dolby Vision, yeah.
Or
yeah.
Not Atmos, yeah. Of course,
Vision, yeah.
Atmos. Vision, yes. Everything Dolby.
So yeah, it's the same set of problems, which is they don't know what your peak brightness is actually going to be, right? Because depending on your screen size, depending on your screen gain, depending on how far away your projector is, how much zoom range you're using, depending on how old the bulb is, depending on your ambient light situation, they don't know what your peak light output is. So changing the light output dynamically doesn't help when you don't know what the brackets are. Right? When you don't know what peak light output is, how do you tone map something accurately on a frame-by-frame basis? That's why we don't see Dolby Vision in projectors, and it's the same reason I don't imagine we're going to see HDR10 plus on projectors either. It'd be all the same problems. You'd have to be able to define all of those variables to the point that you could then process the picture dynamically on a frame-by-frame or scene-by-scene basis. That's a huge challenge. Could somebody do it with something that I imagine would only be available to custom installers? I think that's possible, but for a user projector, I just don't see it happening. I really think that's highly unlikely.
Could you have a built-in light meter on the front of the projector that does a continuous measurement? I think commercial projectors sometimes do something like that.
Yeah, it could be something like that.
It. I mean, that would add to the cost, but
yep,
it would at least be possible.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. But something has to account for that variable. That's the only way.
You don't know.
Yeah. When you don't know what your peak light output is, how do you adjust frame by frame? That's a really tough problem to crack. So yeah, you're right. Yeah, something that is a built-in light sensor, perhaps. Yeah.
So JVC also mentioned that their newest projectors have a low latency mode, and that for the first time, if you use this mode, the projectors can accept a 444 12-bit color signal. But what would that be useful for?
Professionals.
Yeah.
Professionals. Yeah, professionals who are grading actual movie, video, or video game content with an uncompressed signal, right? Uncompressed video signal, something that hasn't gone through any kind of compression yet, hasn't gone through any color compression yet. It's just the raw data signal. So that it'd be useful that there's no home signal other than I guess you could connect a PC potentially. Potentially you could connect a computer and output that type of signal. You need a pretty beefy video card, but they exist. That could be done. But for any consumer electronics source, nothing is sending out that type of signal.
No,
so,
nothing does uncompressed color.
Computers or professionals.
Now, just because they can accept it, though, can they actually display it?
No, it's still a 10-bit panel.
So still kind of what's the point? It's like, oh, well, it's a 12-bit signal. Yeah, but it's not making it out the other end, so...
Like I say, for pros who are working on, say, one of those Sony BVM 30-inch OLEDs... and mastering content, and then they just want to blow it up to see if the resolution that they've been working on this little 30-inch image holds true when you blow it up to 150 inches. They don't have to change the signal to do that, right? So that could be useful for that. They could just be like, hey, okay, we blew it up, we looked at it, the resolution checks out, back to work. Right.
And so after seeing JVC and Sony announce their projectors, Gary pretty much had his mind made up to buy one of the current JVC eShift models, probably the RS520, at its clearance price. But just for the sake of argument, what will he notice most as an improvement going from his LED light source, his DLP Runco, his LED light source DLP Runco to the JVC? And what could a genuine 4K resolution projector at a higher price point offer as an improvement beyond that? Wider color, HDR support, will it look sharper? Will there be more depth?
Black levels and contrast. Really, that's the answer. It's black levels and contrast. DLPs, even ones as good as the Runco, still can't get as dark as the JVC in the black. Still don't have as high intra-scene contrast as the JVC. And honestly, that's the reason why, in my opinion, I'd still take a JVC even over one of the genuine 4K resolution projectors, because they still have better black levels and better contrast. Now, Gary's looking at a 92-inch screen from, I think it's about 8 feet away or so. The resolution is not going to matter. It really isn't. On that size screen from that distance, the 4K resolution versus the E-Shift resolution, it's just totally not going to matter. Now, where he might see a slight difference is he's going from a single chip DLP, which is about as razor sharp as anything can get, to something that is using 3 chips for the red, green, blue, which means there's convergence, right? Those things have to be aligned, and they usually are, ever so slightly misaligned. So there's a chance that it might actually look slightly less sharp than a single chip DLP. But the improvement in black level and contrast is what you're going to see most for sure. Now you also get the wider color and the HDR support. These are great bonuses on top of that, but it's black levels and contrast. That's the number one thing your eye's going to see.
Bobby. Bobby's theater plans are just about all set. As a reminder, the room is roughly 12 by 12, and he's going with a Denon AVR X4300H with a 5.2.4 setup using Klipsch speakers for the ear level speakers and outdoor speaker depot in-ceiling speakers for the Atmos positions. Right now, he's primarily looking at dual SVS PB1000 subs, but HSU is running a sale right now, and a pair of their VTF-1 Mark III subs is about $100 less after shipping than the SVSs would be. Mm-hmm. They have variable port tuning, and with one port open, they claim 22 Hz extension at -2 dB. Are they a good option, or should you just stick with the PB1000s?
If that $100 matters to you, they are perfectly fine. I mean, you're dealing with less than 1,500 cubic feet in this room. So output-wise, pressurization-wise, and I would say extension-wise, because you're going to get some room gain in here. You're actually going to get a fair amount of room gain in here. And that VTF-1, while its native tuning is about 25 Hertz, you can do this single port plug in there, extends the tuning down even a little bit lower, plus the room gain you're going to get below. It's not as though it stops like a brick wall at 22 Hertz or so. It's still playing down to 20 Hertz. It's just getting quieter at that point. But with the room gain you're going to have, if you can put that $100 to use, I got zero problem recommending VTF-1 Mark IIIs in this room size. Those will totally work fine.
So the wire for his surround speakers is already installed in the walls, and it comes out of the walls about 5 feet above the floor. Is that too high for his on-wall clip surround speakers? Should they be right at ear level, or just slightly above ear level? He could mount the speakers lower and cover the wire with acoustic panels, but would that mess up the sound?
Well, so first of all, we still think your surround speakers...
You can mount them a little higher. It's okay. 5 feet's not that bad. Mine are higher than that. They're not Klipsch, but still.
Yeah, we still very much think your surround speakers should be elevated. Now, the line we always use is figure out, let's just say you have a 3-seater couch, right? Let's say you sit in the middle of a 3-seater couch. There's someone sitting on your left. There's someone sitting on your right. I want the person sitting on your right to still have a clear line of sight from their left ear to the left surround speaker, right? Which means that it's going to have to be elevated a bit. Otherwise, it's going to get blocked by the person sitting to your left and you. You would have to get through both of your heads to reach the person sitting on your right. I want them to have a clear line of sight from their head to the left surround speaker, and I want the person sitting on your left to have a clear line of sight to the right surround speaker. So that means they're going to be elevated. Now, is that going to be 5 feet off the ground? I don't know. It might be ever so slightly lower than that if you're going for minimums, but 5 feet is fine, man. That's totally fine. You've still got 3 feet from the speaker to the ceiling. Your Atmos speakers are in different positions than where their surround speakers are to your left and right. Your Atmos speakers, I know in Bobby's setup, are behind you and in front of you. You're still going to have nice separation between those. They're not going to sound redundant. I wouldn't go to any trouble. 5 feet off the floor seems fine.
I think it's fine too.
Yeah.
Nick in Melbourne in Australia. Nick says he came across our podcast just a week ago or so, and that was just at the right time. He wants to upgrade his 5.1 system that hasn't been upgraded since the late 90s, and he's hoping we can point him in the right direction. His room is 14 feet long, 10.5 feet wide, and 8 feet high. He sits 6.5 feet from the TV and front speakers in his primary front row, with a second row of seats and a riser behind that. The room is fully carpeted with a thick underpad, but he doesn't have any additional acoustic panels. Whatever he buys, he'd like it to be capable of working in a larger room as well, since he does plan to move to a larger place at some point. So first, he has a 50-inch Pioneer Kuro Plasma, and he's thinking he'll replace that with an LG OLED, so the display side of things seems under control. But what would be his ideal screen size? He'd think he'd like something bigger than his current 50-inch.
Right, so 6.5 feet, thankfully, you're pretty darn close, right? Now, you're talking about going to an OLED, which I completely think is a fantastic choice, especially coming from a Pioneer Kuro Plasma. Almost anything else is going to disappoint you at that point. At this point, but an LG OLED is not. An LG OLED is actually going to be an upgrade from your Kuro Plasma. You're going to be super happy with it. They do have the 77-inch size, but oh man, are they expensive? I can't imagine that's in the cards. So the 65-inch size is going to give you slightly more than a 40-degree field of view. That's really nice for a flat panel. I mean, I'd get a 65-inch OLED and be super happy with that in your setup. Now, if for some reason you're like, I have to have a 45 or 50-degree field of view, and now you're getting up to a 75 or even 80-inch size, like a 70-inch size. If I were being super persnickety, a 70-inch size would be like just about right for me, because that's like a 44.5 degree angle or something like that from 6.5 feet away. But I mean, 65 inches as an OLED is going to look spectacular where you are. So I don't know. Is there any point in saying anything else?
No, I don't think so. Get a 65. It'll be just fine.
Yeah.
It's bigger than what you have.
Exactly. So. Even the 55 is bigger, but the 65 is, that's what you want, man. That's going to be fantastic.
Because even if someday you're in a larger room, it doesn't mean you have to sit farther away necessarily. You can just have more space behind you. So.
Or you can have that on the wall and then, here comes the projector screen in front of it.
Yeah, you could. On the speaker side, his speakers use Dynaudio drivers and cabinets that he built himself, and his subwoofer is a Sunfire True that has a 10-inch driver and a 2,500 watt amplifier, all built into an 11-inch cube. He has ADCOM amplifiers, one 2x200 model, and another that delivers 3x100 watts, plus 2 more channels at 60. He likes his new setup to support all the latest formats, Atmos, DTS:X, and he still likes his existing speakers, so do we see any reason to replace them? No. If you like your speakers, and they sound nice, they sound like they should sound nice, then no. Why should you?
Yeah, I mean, Dynaudio makes very nice speakers. They make great drivers. You built the cabinets yourself. I don't know how they sound, but you're happy with them. There's nothing there that's screaming to me you need to upgrade your speakers. The sub that you have, now, again, it claims it can play down to 20 hertz, and I mean, I'm sure there's output going on at 20 hertz. I don't doubt that, but you've got a pretty small room right now. I'm sure it's fine. So I'm not even going to tell you to upgrade that at this point. Once you get to a larger room in the future, I'm probably going to say it'd be worth your while to upgrade that sub. There's just, even with that much wattage, there's limitations on what a 10-inch driver in a tiny little box with a sealed design can do. There are just physics limitations. But in this current room size, I think it's fine. So nothing here says you got to upgrade what you got.
No. His existing Pre-Pro only does 5.1 Dolby Digital and DTS, so clearly that needs an upgrade. Mm-hmm. But he isn't sure if he should go for 5.1.2 or 0.4, and he's leaning towards getting an AV receiver with pre-outs, but there are Pre-Pros without any amps built in if those would be better. No. What do we recommend, though? Can he save his money by getting, say, a Denon X3300 that tops out at 5.1.2? Or should he spend the extra for a Marantz 6011 that can do 0.4? And should he continue to use his ADCOM amps, or use only the receiver's built-in amps, or mix together?
Now, I'm going to say, you haven't upgraded since the 90s. And the price difference between a 3300 and either the Marantz 6011 or the Denon X4300H. Now, granted, he's in Australia, so he doesn't have accessories for less, the prices that he's looking at, it might be a greater difference. But if you're going to do Atmos, I feel pretty strongly that you should try to have 4 overhead speakers. There's no way to steer sounds above you if you only have 2 speakers above you. You only got 2 speakers. You can steer them left to right, but you can't steer them front to back. You're missing out on that experience. I feel quite strongly that if you're going to do Atmos, if it's at all possible, you want to do, in your case, 5.2, which is coming up. He's going to ask about subwoofers in a second, but 5.2.4. I know that's a bit more money, but you're the type of person who buys your gear and holds onto it for a long time. I can't in good conscience recommend getting something that maxes out at 5.2.2 and can't go any farther. If you get a 6011 from Rance or an X4300H from Denon, not only can you do 5.2.4 right away, but you can expand that to do 11 speakers. You could do 7.2.4. They have the capability to do that.
And he already has amps.
And you already have amps, yeah. So I would absolutely keep using your AdComs, right? You can power. He has 7 amplifier channels. I mean, choose whatever you want. The pre-outs are there on any of the models you listed. Choose whatever you want. I mean, I don't see any reason to buy more amplifiers for the surround speakers that you have behind you, or for the overhead speakers, your rear heights, your front heights, whatever they might turn out being. I would just use the built-in amplifiers of your receiver to power those 2 speakers, right? But you got 7 amplifiers, external amplifiers. You've got 9 amps that are going to be built into the 6011 or the X4300H. You want to do 9 speakers? You definitely got the amps to do it. I'd use a mixture. Yeah. AdCom amps are really nice, so no reason to nix them.
No, you might as well. Continuing with the Atmos train, he isn't a big fan of cutting holes in his ceiling, and he isn't too hyped about upward firing speakers either. But since he likes to build his own speaker cabinets, he was thinking of making 2 or 4 more speakers with an angled design, kind of like the SVS Prime Elevation speakers, that he could mount high on his walls and have them fired down at the seats. Would this work well?
I think so.
Yeah, it should. It seems like it should. So
yeah, I mean, your seating distance for your front speakers certainly is close enough to that front wall that if you put speakers, say, in the the corner that's created by your front wall to the ceiling, right? You have those up there angled down at you. You call them front heights, or heck, their probably angle is fine to call them top fronts. Doesn't really matter. And then similarly at the back of your room. Now he's actually going to ask about this with his surround speakers, but we might as well just say that right now. He's actually
should he lower his surround speakers if he does add the rear heights?
And in this case, I actually do think so. Now, it doesn't look like his speaker wire is inside the wall right now, so to me, that's a pretty easy move, right? You just, whatever the wall bracket that's holding them on there right now, I would lower them a bit, so that you get a little bit more separation between those surround speakers and what's going to be your rear height speakers on the rear wall at the ceiling, angled down. Try to get, if you can get 4 feet of distance between them, that'd be great. But don't sacrifice your surrounds too much. We're saying that because it doesn't look like he can put the surround right speaker to his right because it's curtains over a window. I'm assuming there, right?
Yeah, it looks like.
Yeah. So, yeah, I would lower those surround speakers a bit because they're up pretty darn high right now. And then I'd put front heights and rear heights. No need to do anything on your ceiling. And in a room this size, is going to sound great.
So would there be any benefit in getting a second subwoofer given his room size?
Room size has nothing to do with it.
No, it's not about output. It's about evenness, uniformity.
That's right. And you have 2 rows of seats. I'm certain that not all 4 of those seats are probably occupied all the time, but who cares? Why not have uniform bass across all 4 of your seats? You put 2 rows of seats in there. I'm assuming you want everyone to have a good experience. The 2 subs get you uniform bass. It's not about louder. It's not about anything else. It's just about more uniform. Currently, his 1 sub is in the front right corner. It sure looks like his rear left corner has space for a small sub back there. Looks it to me anyway.
Yeah.
So put one in that rear left corner.
I don't know. Oh, no, wait. He didn't. Oh, yeah, he did. He has that subwoofer that he built. What would he be able to do?
No, that was the Sunfire. Yeah, he has the Sunfire, the little guy.
Oh, he does. Oh, that's right. He just had the Sunfire.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yes, get a second sub. Yes.
Yes. The vast majority of his content is on a Plex server, and he uses an Apple TV with his Plex player, Plex app as his player. The Apple TV that he has does not support bitstream output for all the latest formats, so he plans on upgrading his playback device at some point. But until then, will simulating Atmos be worthwhile?
Yeah, I mean, you'll be using the Dolby Surround Up Mixer, or for DTS content, you can use the DTS Neural X Up Mixer. Yeah, I think in my opinion, I like the Dolby Surround Up Mixer a bit more, even though I wind up using DTS Neural X because I like my front wide speakers. But given my druthers, I'd have Dolby Surround with front wides, but that isn't an option. But yeah, the Dolby Surround Up Mixer, it sounds really, really nice for any content that isn't mixed in actual Atmos or actual DTS X. It still does a really nice job. So yeah, go for it. I mean, hey, if you hate it, you turn it back to 5.1. That's still an option. So yeah. Oh, and if he is looking for a player, the NVIDIA Shield TV, that's your best bet for a standalone streaming device that can output lossless bit streams. So if he's got, like, say, Blu-ray backups, right, in MKV container or something like that, that still has the full lossless audio, and NVIDIA Shield TV is a great playback device. The other one that is capable of doing it, the Plex app still needs to be updated to get this working, but Xbox One. Xbox One can output full lossless bit streams, Atmos bit streams. It can do that. It's just the Plex app for it hasn't been updated just yet. But the Plex guys are pretty good about getting those updates done. So I would expect that to work. So maybe you already have an Xbox One. I don't know. That'd be another device that could work for you.
Yeah. And it hasn't been that long since they added the bitstream support. So it's not like Plex is taking their time or anything. So is there anything else that he should upgrade? Maybe add acoustic panels, maybe change the lighting, anything?
Lighting looks pretty good to me in this room. He's even got a bias light, it looks like, behind his
screen
does look
there.
Like. Which, or that might be an overhead light, but whatever. It's having the effect of a bias light. Yeah. This isn't a projection setup, so he's already darkened the room with these curtains, but it doesn't need to be pitch black because it's not a projection setup. It's a flat panel. Already got the carpet. I mean, you always could add acoustic panels. In a room this small, you are going to be having some bass loading going on. So corner bass traps wouldn't be a bad idea at all. I know that's what Tom would say. I know that's what Tom would say, would be corner bass traps. So the second sub, that's number one. You got to get yourself a second sub. We talked about the other things for adding more speakers, going to Atmos, getting the new AV receiver. If there's anything else I would do, corner bass traps.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you could, I don't know what windows or if there's like a sliding door on one of those. It looks like the ones behind the seats is probably just a window, unless that's where the door is, because we can't see the door into the room in the pictures. You could put panels behind the curtains if you really wanted to.
Yeah, you even could even just
freestyle a small room.
You could even just put raw insulation if you don't care what the people outside are seeing.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's I can't think of too much else. It's looking good in here.
Looks
already,
really nice.
So.
He's even got like really dark colored carpet. So
I know.
Looks nice. Good job.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think, is this last?
It is.
It is.
And that's
last.
good. It'll be just about right time for this podcast.
Will be just about right. Tony decided to go with a BenQ HT2150 projector and a 135-inch screen for his 9-foot viewing distance. He was pretty much set on a silver ticket screen, but then he noticed there were also curved projection screens.
There are.
He's noticed that screens at actual movie theaters are all curved. Actually, they're not. Lots of them are, but not all of them are. So would having a curved projection screen at home be more immersive?
You don't need a curved screen,
no.
Tony. You don't need a curved screen.
The reason they are curved when they are at full-size movie theaters is because it's a really big screen in a really big room with seats at various angles. And also, in some cases, for 3D purposes. But
yeah,
mostly...
and it helps direct more light back to the audience.
Yes.
Right? There's a little bit less light that gets reflected to the side walls with a curved screen, but that you don't need to worry about that at home.
No.
The main reason you would ever consider a curved screen at home is if you're using an anamorphic lens. And it would have to be one of the older anamorphic lenses at this point that still created pin cushioning distortion, which is where, because it's altering the shape of the image and stretching it horizontally, sometimes it would make what would happen. The outside corners would be slightly wider and taller than the middle of the image. You got that
Yes.
weird barrel distortion. So then if you put that onto a curved screen, it fit the geometry better.
Yeah, and
it's
it flattens
only
it
if-
back out.
But
It's
and
like
the
the-
modern, yeah,
The opposite of vignetting is what it looked like.
right, yeah. And the modern anamorphic lenses that we have now don't have that distortion anymore. So even if you were, you'd still want just a flat screen. So yeah, don't get a curved screen, dude. Just get yourself one of the flat silver ticket screens. That's the best bang for your buck that's out there. Yeah, no need to go curved.
Yeah. So his center speaker will be below the screen, so he's trying to strike the right balance of screen size and still allow enough height for the speaker to be, but not so high that it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And as a result, he needs a pretty short stand to hold his center speaker and a short mount to hold his projector close to the ceiling. Can we recommend any?
Yeah, so what I would do, because it sounds like he's going for a fixed frame screen.
Yes.
So I would suggest maybe getting a center channel mount that's actually like a wall mount, right? Pinpoint sells some, I mean, it's just L brackets essentially. It's really all it is L brackets that you attach them to your wall and they hold your center channel. So wherever your screen needs to be, you put these L brackets below that and there's your center channel exactly where it needs to be. And for the projector mount, you do want to look for something that would be called a low profile projector mount. Now, one that we were recommended previously, I can't find that one anymore. So there's a company called Premier Mounts. They actually sell their mount on Amazon. It's just their universal low profile mount. It's going for $65 right now on Amazon, or I think it's $70 for the black version. I think your ceilings were white if I'm remembering this room correctly, so the white ceiling mount would be fine. The projector is white, I know that. So a white projector mount for a slightly lower cost seems like no problem to me. So yeah, $65 is not the cheapest thing in the world, but it's kind of what you need. You need a low profile mount. So yeah, if you look for a Premier Mounts, universal low profile mount on Amazon, there it shall be.
His speakers are Paradigm Reference Series, and he doesn't want to cut holes in his ceiling, so he looked for slim wall-mountable speakers that he could mount on his ceiling. He came across the Paradigm Cinema Series. Would they be the best timbre match for his other Paradigm speakers, or is there some other speaker that would be easier to mount to his ceiling that he should buy instead?
I mean, I think they're fine. The Cinema Series and the Reference Series are probably different enough that if you like set them up as your front speakers and A/B compared them and critically listened to them, they aren't a perfect timbre match. But overall, Paradigm goes for a very neutral sound, and these are Atmos speakers, man. They just don't need to be a super perfect timbre match. If the Cinema Series are affordable to you, I'd be totally fine going with those. They're very easy to mount to a wall, which means they can be mounted to a ceiling and just firing straight down like they oughta. Really wide dispersion because they're a super compact design. So yeah, I got no problem recommending those. I'd also have no problem recommending the Focal Birds that I recommend so often. You get them at Accessories for Less. If the Focal Birds are less expensive than the Paradigm Cinema Series, get the Focal Birds because super easy to mount to the ceiling and they will sound absolutely fine mated with your Paradigms. But yeah, I got no problem with the Cinemas. They're fine.
So on the power side of things, is the APC J35 worth the extra money over the J25? The only difference seems to be voltage regulation. Is that super important to have?
Not really. The J35's battery also lasts a bit longer, so that's part of the price. It's a bigger battery in there. But no, I mean the J25 is a fantastic value. It's why I recommend it all the time. It's fantastic value. It's exactly what I would want. It's battery backup, excellent power protection, voltage regulation. It's pretty rare that ever kicks on. I mean, if you happen to know that you get frequent like small voltage sags or something like that, if that's a known thing in your house, then maybe it might be worth it. But no, overall, I say, yeah, just get the J25. Save some money.
What's the difference in cost?
Most places about $125. Yeah. So it's not
worth saving if you don't need it. So
Nah,
sure.
You really don't need it.
So he's getting a Denon AVR X4300H. What's the current go-to 2-channel amp for expanding to all 11 speakers?
I know, we're so sad that Dayton is gone.
Yeah.
It was such an easy recommendation for $100. So easy. So we're back to the one that was always recommended before that Dayton existed and then went away, which is Audio Source. They're still around. Audio Source with their Amp 100. It's about $130. So, the $100 Dayton was $30 cheaper. Why not? But $130 isn't going to break your bank if $100 wasn't. So the Amp 100 from Audio Source, great little Class AB amplifier. Get it at Amazon, $130. Great choice. Now, Dayton does have their replacement for the APA 100, which is their APA 102. It's a Class D amp now. With your Paradigm speakers, I got no problem recommending that. Your Paradigm speakers are going to have no problem being driven by a Class D amp. So it's $100. You want to get the APA 102 from Dayton, which is available at Parts Express for $100. I say go for it because your speakers are easy to drive. So yeah, that'd be a fine choice.
Does he need an Ultra HD Blu-ray player in order to get Atmos, or can his PS4 do the job?
Well, your PS4 can do the job on Blu-rays that have Atmos or DTSX. So yeah, Atmos does come on some Blu-ray releases, not Ultra HD Blu-ray, just 1080p Blu-ray. Plenty of 1080p Blu-rays have Atmos or DTSX. However, there are a number of releases now where the Ultra HD Blu-ray version has Atmos, but the Blu-ray version doesn't. There are a few where that's the case. But the short answer is, do you need Ultra HD Blu-ray to get Atmos? No, because it is available on regular 1080p Blu-ray. It's a release-by-release thing. Your PS4 can play it back. Your PS4 can't play Ultra HD Blu-rays, but it can play regular Blu-rays. If you were to get an Xbox One S or an Xbox One X to add to your gaming capabilities, those things both have Ultra HD Blu-ray players and can do bitstream audio for Atmos and DTSX, so there's another way to look at it if you don't already have an Xbox One S or X.
And in addition to Blu-rays, what streaming devices have Atmos capability?
I'm trying to think, on the most latest stuff. So, I mean, NVIDIA Shield, Xbox One, those are the easy answers. Those ones I know for sure. The other ones, it's back to that whole thing because it is actually Dolby Digital Plus on the streaming services with the Atmos extension. So as long as it can, well, even there, it's still not. There are some that can send out Dolby Digital Plus, but they don't send the Atmos extensions. So it's not super cut and dry. The safe answers that I know for sure are the NVIDIA Shield TV and the Xbox One. Those ones can do it.
Does the, what is it, the Roku Ultra, is that what it's called? Does it do it?
I don't know for sure, because that one can do 4K resolution, of course. It can do HDR10. It can't do Dolby Vision. The only streaming device right now that does Dolby Vision is the Chromecast Ultra. But guess what it doesn't do? It doesn't do Atmos. So yeah, just get an NVIDIA Shield TV or an Xbox One, man. I mean, if you get an Xbox One S or an Xbox One X, you're like set for everything you want to do. So that's kind of the safest answer I can give you.
You got the UHD Blu-ray, you got the streaming, you got everything.
And if you got a PS4, I assume you're a gamer of some sort. So
Does the PS4 Pro, does it do it?
Nope. I mean, it can do Atmos, but it doesn't have an Ultra HD Blu-ray
that's right,
drive. And as far as I know, they haven't updated their apps to output it yet. It's a mess with this stuff.
It is. It's always a mess. But that's why we're here. To try to see through a little of the mess. I mean, not me as much, but but I try when I can. So.
Well, we went past 2 hours, but we got through all the questions that were on the list. Just barely. We did get a bunch of questions that came in on Monday and today on Tuesday. So I'll mention PJ, Gary, Mike, Donald, Jonathan, Josh, and another Josh. We got your questions. You're on the list for next week. Not to worry. But yeah, those were the questions that we had on our topic list that we locked down on Sunday night. So yeah, I think that's it. Austin, man, thanks for sticking in for this whole thing. Yeah. It's so nice to see you.
Yeah, it was. And just so that we do it again, our listeners of the week this week, we want to continue to thank. There was George, Martin, Jay, and Mike. So thank all of you. And, And
Yeah, I'll say George, thanks for the donation. Martin, congrats on the Oppo purchase. Jay, thanks for talking us up directly to Gary Yakubian over at SVS. And Mike, huge thank you to Mike, because that's such an awesome deal for Tom to be brought into the Atmos age. And a huge thank you to Mark over at Accessories for Less as well. That's so awesome. And looking forward to it. Tom's looking forward to trying out a Pioneer Elite because he hasn't gone hands-on with one for a while. Oh, and that whole thing that we used to rag on Pioneer about, because for their Atmos setups, they used to give you like the A through F configurations, and if you didn't match one of those configurations, you were out of luck. That's gone. Thank God that's gone. On these ones, the 701, 801, and 901, it's like, you got height 1 and height 2. Choose what position you want those to be. It can be a mix of upward firing, top, middle is an option. Like, it's all there now. So it's all good on the Atmos configuration front. That's a lovely thing to have seen Pioneer improve. So we're happy about that. This is AVRant. We answer home theater and AV questions. If you want your question answered, all you have to do is ask, and please send it via email to question@avrant.com. That'll reach Austin. That'll reach me. Tom doesn't care until he sees it on the topic list, so don't go asking Tom directly. But question@avrant.com, that's the place to send it. I know people like to reach us in other ways, but that gets you on the podcast. Email question@avrant.com. If you want to reach us individually for some reason, you can. I'm Rob at avrant.com. Tom is Tom at avrant.com. And we're available on Twitter. I'm at First Reflect. He's at avrant_Tom. And Austin is at Austin Pond. Austin, you got a podcast of your own. What's going on over there?
I do. It's called We Watch Movies, and we review antique sewing machines. So
desu ne. That's it. We watch movies with a name like that. What else could it possibly be about? Thank you so much for listening. Hopefully this video recording turns out somewhat half decent. Hoping everybody in Florida stays safe. Hoping everybody in Texas is doing okay and Louisiana is doing okay. And for whatever horrible storm is coming next, because they seem to be coming one after another. We've had 2. Let's hope we don't have 3, but they seem to come in 3s, don't they? So definitely hoping everybody stays safe and everybody's okay. Was there anything else? Did I miss anything? I think we're okay.
I don't think so. I think that's all.
I had a title in mind, but now I forgot it, so we're going to have to go back through.
I'll have to figure out something. Maybe the title is, I had a title in mind.
We've said that too many times. That'd be a cliche.
Yeah. I'm just happy to see Pioneer still making stuff, because there was a chance they were just going to go away for a while there. And I like Pioneer. So.
Austin, thanks for so much for co-hosting with me. And so for AVRant, I'm Rob H.
And I am Austin Pond. Now go out and listen to something. All right.